Tesla is building a foundation model, which is the basis of the AI that Tesla wants to use for full self-drive as much as the humanoid robot and probably many other things. So this is in line with my just previous episode where I spoke about the power of investment analysis as it pertains to when a company does something that you expect it to do. So when you're, I don't want to say ahead of the game by any means, because obviously they're doing the work and they are the game. So I'm not ahead of anything. But what's important for us investors is to be in tune with the people we invest in. And it doesn't matter if you're a seed investor where you talk to one founder, or you're a investor like us in publicly listed companies. Companies have their personality, and you can have a good sense for who they are and what they do. And this is, I think, probably the main job of an investor, is to try to understand that and then channel the capital to the place where you think wealth can be created. At least that's how we do our business, and that's, you know, obviously for a whole other podcast is what is your goal, what is your purpose, what is your strategy, and all those sort of things. But fundamentally what Tesla is doing is exactly what we expected them to do and also what we wanted them to do, which is to build a foundation model, to use the transformer technology, which has been all the rage for the last probably 6-7 years in Silicon Valley, and then try to build on top of that and try to use the foundation model as a basis for decision making. Because artificial intelligence is really the application. So machine learning is sort of, well, that's how we teach machines to do X, Y, Z. But then AI is the actual application. In other words, well, am I doing a chatbot, or am I doing self-driving, or am I doing picking up stuff in a factory? That's the AI part of things. So in this episode, I want to reiterate what Tesla is doing based on CVPR, Computer Vision and Pattern Recognition Conference in Vancouver about 2 weeks ago. And their engineers, the Tesla engineers, have presented what they're doing. And it's really, really revealing, because they're doing exactly that. They're doing foundation models, and they're doing front-end applications on top of foundation models. So imagine ChatGPT is the front end that allows you to talk to the transformer, which is GPT, General Pre-trained Transformer. And you can use that GPT to have a conversation about physics, or you can use that GPT to have a conversation to write poetry, and so on and so forth. You can have different front ends. But what's really fundamental here is that there is a foundation model which has a compressed intelligence of the world, and then you can de-convolute that intelligence into useful front-end applications. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's July 2nd, 2023. This is Cryptelco. It's a Monday morning here in Europe. Markets aren't still open, so we are up 123.1% for the year. The market's up 15.7%. We're outperforming by 107.4%. Tesla has announced their delivery numbers for the second quarter. They beat by about 5%, so the stock's actually up about 6% pre-market now. These are still early hours in New York hours, so there will be some time to digest all of this and then see how the stock reacts. But overall, before I go into my episode, just want to talk a little bit about the Tesla numbers. What's great is that they beat on every front, production and delivery. I think what's great is that the delivery numbers are growing sequentially year over year. What's maybe not so great is the inventory increase, but the inventory increase has to be caveated in a sense that we're talking about absolute numbers increase in terms of days of inventory, which is a metric of inventory relative to the actual delivery number, the absolute delivery number. That number isn't growing that much. So in other words, Tesla is adding inventory to the system. So they have about 100,000 cars now in inventory, but on a 2 million per annum delivery situation, that's 5%. So in other words, if you deliver 2 million cars per annum and you have 100,000 cars sitting in inventory, then you could have potentially, well, things could go very quickly when, let's say, you stop production for a couple of weeks and then you clear out all your inventory. So this is not necessarily concerning, but I just want to say that, of course, we want to see a situation where fundamentally we start stabilizing on the inventory front. Okay, that's all I'm trying to say here. But let's not talk about this now. Of course, there will always be a negative in any kind of positive situation. This could be one of them. But just to finish my inventory, the way I think about inventory is that they are growing at a fast clip production because they consider themselves production constrained, and that they're currently having a little bit of lag in demand, and that will catch up at some point. So there is still a little bit of a demand issue, not in absolute terms, but in relative terms. In other words, they're growing a little bit faster than demand is growing. And I think that is just a very hard match for them to achieve. And I believe that they absolutely can also, in other words, when demand stabilizes, when we see, let's say, stronger demand in China, or the world economy starts recovering, then we will have situations where inventory actually will shrink. And we could have situations even like in the past where we have wait times. So right now we don't have wait times. We have build up in inventory, but think of inventory as like the inverse of wait times. Sometimes you have wait times, sometimes it's like you go to your favorite coffee shop, sometimes it's empty, sometimes it's packed, you have to stand in line. It's that kind of thing. So this is not an absolute structural problem with Tesla. But now let's get to the situation that I actually want to talk about here, which is the presentation that Tesla engineers gave at CVPR, the Computer Vision and Pattern Recognition Conference in Vancouver. I think this is one of those conferences that I believe will go in the history of AI. I think it's that foundational. Why? Because we have the build out of a foundation model of the tokenization of the real world by Tesla. This is, in a nutshell, what's going on here. So we had a breakthrough in transformers, which were used primarily for text-based applications. So this is, of course, what's going on with GPT, ChatGPT, and so on and so forth. BERT, and all these other models, the Google model, and now all these other models are coming out. Of course, the Facebook and the Baidus and the Alibabas of this world. Everybody's going to have their model, and everybody's going to push their application. But fundamentally, the idea is the following: you take a body. And let's stay with ChatGPT. So you take the body of text, which is available on the internet, you read it, you somehow tokenize it and reduce it. This is the key. You reduce the information into a very compressed vector space. Once it's reduced into this very compressed vector space, which in other words is the weights that the model has, which is the little knobs that are fine-tuned to represent that reality that you just read. And once you have that in vector space, which is something a machine understands, that's all vector space is, it's a bunch of numbers that the machine can understand, you can then de-convolute that. You can de-convolute that compressed vector space into something you can use. For example, write me a poem, write me, a summary of Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, write me a summary of what is Oscar Wilde's significance for, English poetry, whatever, the representation in text form, that's what a transformer is. It's a compressed representation of reality. Now, what Tesla is doing, it's expanding this reality, which the transformers that we talk about are the transformers that compress reality in text form. Tesla is doing that with the real world. Now, with an application in mind, which is robotics, self-driving. Let's stay with self-driving. But the eventual idea here is to try to represent reality the way we see it. So that's probably the right word to say. So the reality that we can see, because they're using cameras, so the reality that we can see, humans, with the help of cameras, so just think of it like an extension of our own sensor system through cameras, which is like having eyes around your car, for example, things like that. So what Tesla is doing, it's taking the representation of reality as we see it, compressing it into a vector space, or what Dr. Nordahl says, gamification of the world, doesn't matter. Once the reality that we see is compressed into a vector, once all that knowledge is somehow compressed in a vector space, then it can be deconvoluted into front-end applications. For example, drive me down that road, generate a billion versions of that road with different scenarios so my car can learn how to drive in edge cases, pick up this thing and put it there. And a lot of front-end applications can be built on top of it. This is the idea. This is what they presented. This is now, if you go back a few weeks, maybe months, I don't remember exactly, I'll put it in the show notes, where I spoke about this. I spoke about end-to-end learning, and I spoke about the need for animation. I spoke about the way to find ways to animate the world so we can learn from the world through animation. A lot of those things are actually now becoming reality through the work of Tesla engineering. This is the key. This is what's so fundamental. So for us, this is absolutely the most important sequence of information that we got from Tesla in a long time. There's a lot of things they're doing well. We were very happy with the price declines in the beginning of the year, which are resulting in a massive recovery of the stock. So we were right on that, and that's great. But this is much, much more fundamental. We believe that this will put Tesla head-to-head with NVIDIA into the company of the early part of the 21st century, which will be the company of real-world AI. That's what Tesla is going to be. We are fully invested in this team. We have two positions. One is Tesla, one is NVIDIA. They're both very, very instrumental in this. Tesla is the Apple of the world. NVIDIA is going to be the for everybody else of the world kind of thing. In other words, the analogy would be that you have a fully vertically integrated end-to-end system, which is called Tesla, which will give you robotics. And then you will have NVIDIA, which will do this in a general form for everybody else to tap in and use the technology for their own purposes. So if Walmart wants to build their own robots in their own warehouse, they can do it with the help of NVIDIA. Tesla will have their own humanoid robots and so on and so forth. That's, of course, down the road. There's going to be a lot more applications that we can't even dream about right now that will be built on these foundation models. But what's key right now, where we stand today, is, again, for us investors, most important is that we're in tune with our investment. This is great. We will take advantage of that as investors by building large positions, having large concentrations, and also understanding where we're going with this. Okay, this is the key. Since we're not in control of where it's going, the only thing we have is always the only degree of freedom we have is we can get out. We decide to buy and we decide to sell. That's the only degrees of freedom we have as investors. And the way we decide when to sell is hopefully we never have to sell. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to, usually because of leverage, sometimes because we're wrong, like with CRISPR. But in this case, we're very happy because we have the right amount of leverage with the right amount of conviction. And this is what Tesla is giving us because they're anticipating our thoughts a bit. Or in other words, we're very much in tune with them. And that's really what I wanted to convey here. It's you have a foundation model. So this particular episode, it's not just about the actual technical aspects of the idea that Tesla is promoting here with the foundation model that compresses reality into a transformer and then allows Tesla to deconvolute reality into front-end applications. This is, of course, great. But the other thing I wanted to convey in this particular episode is that how important it is to be in tune with your investment. The purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund. So this is take this as a massive lesson for everybody, that you can be in tune with your investment. You can have a very you can have a sort of almost one-to-one translation between what you're thinking and what's actually going on in the investment space. This is what I wanted to convey here. And I think as far as the foundation models are concerned, I think there's two massive applications. One is the animation side of things that will allow Tesla to generate animated scenarios to learn, but more importantly also there will be abilities to, sort of through prompt engineering, have the car drive itself based on that foundation model. We don't know exactly where these things are going right now. It's still early days. We're gonna, obviously monitor this very closely and try to stay on top of it also technically. Hopefully there will be soon an AI Day 3 where these things will be conveyed, because these are new things. These are new ideas. And these are foundational ideas. So these are not just sort of, we tweaked our model a little bit. This is a whole new idea, the idea of a foundation. What is a foundation model? Again, you represent reality in a compressed vector space, and then you can deconvolute anything based on that compressed vector. You have reality translated into machine language. The machine understands reality. This is how the machine memorizes what is real. The road down your street with the coffee shop, and sometimes there's a chair right in the middle of the road because one of the patrons likes to sit there and he forgets to put it back. That's something that is somehow captured in the representation of reality, because you drove down there many times, and then you also generated another billion virtual versions of this, and that's one of them. And your car learns how to navigate and anticipate that sometimes there could be a chair, particularly on this road. So these are things, reality can be compressed in a machine understandable way, which is sort of vector space. How many dimensions and things like that, that's an engineering question. And then once it's represented in that vector space, it can be deconvoluted. In other words, it can be sort of unfolded back into something that, let's say, humans understand or robots understand. Robots, at least today, understand the world very similarly to us. So when we do a transformer, it's not like that is what the robot thinks. The transformer is just simply translating reality into machine language. Understanding, as far as it pertains to machine or humans, is very similar, at least today. In other words, then we have to deconvolute that reality into something, let's say three-dimensional pictures, something annotated things like house, car, pedestrian, things like that. Like the machine still has to think in human terms. When I say still, that means that it is obviously possible that eventually this could be changed, that the machine could have its own understanding on a much different level of abstraction, but we're not there yet. And of course, that's not also the goal right now. Tesla is a robotics company. It's not an AI company, so let's keep that in mind. That's not what they need to build robots that can help humans accomplish tasks. So to summarize, we had great production numbers and delivery numbers for the second quarter. We also had a presentation at CVPR, which is reiterating our thesis that Tesla is on path to build a massively transformative transformer, sorry for the pun, which is a representation of reality in machine language, reality captured through cameras, represented in machine language, in other words, in a vector space, which then gets deconvoluted into front-end applications such as driving a car, creating animated scenarios for full self-drive learning, or also creating scenarios and applications for the humanoid robot. Thank you.